I've been seeing way too many videos about people DIYing concrete countertops on YouTube lately, so I'm going to do something a little different with this video and call each and every one of you concrete counter folks out. I think it's a real shame that people have been all over this because it takes so much time, effort, and materials. It's fragile, needs a lot of maintenance, and devalues your house if used indoors in almost all cases. Now, this isn't to say that concrete doesn't have a place. It definitely does. I just don't think that place is in kitchen counters when there are such better options available. This video is about one of the best options, quartz. I'll show you how, with the same tools as you'd need for concrete work anyway, you can get a nicer looking, more durable, lower maintenance, and overall classier final product. With quartz, there's no need for reinforcing material, no need for a form, no special cake tool, no vibrating, no cure time, no finishing top coats, no epoxy, and you can build it outside or in your garage to keep your house clean instead of trying to pour it in place. Quartz measures and marks with just a tape and a pencil. I'm using a Makita track saw because the Festool is too expensive, the Milwaukee didn't exist at the time, and most importantly, the Makita I have is variable speed, which is very important when cutting quartz or even large format tile. You need your blade spinning at a much lower speed to cut quartz than for cutting wood, and this track saw was the only one I could find that would allow that. I used giant blue clamps because I already had them and I didn't want to spend extra on track saw clamps. This work table design I stole from Workshop Companion, and his video is linked below. It's important to have a table similar to this as it gives you support for your cuts, lets you drain water away, and lets you climb inside when it comes time to do cutouts for sinks. It's also easily collapsible, movable, and you can use 2x4x10s to support full length slabs. This blade is a dry cutting 6-inch blade. I didn't want to set up a water rig for the track saw. When you're doing any dry cutting or grinding, the same as concrete, be sure to wear a well-fitted respirator. This, the same as concrete, releases silica particles which can cause silicosis and lung cancer. Beyond just the mask, I also hook up dust collection. This track saw, the same as I'm sure basically all other track saws, lets me set a depth stop. Cutting is slow going. This is sped up by 10 times, so this 12-second cut actually took over 3 minutes. With quartz, you really want to take your time with it, especially when dry cutting, as excessive heat can burn material pretty easily. You can see towards the end of the cut, even with the track saw shroud and the shop vac, it's still throwing a fair amount of dust. I got a pretty good cut here, within a stretched 30-second on one end and exactly perfect on the other. Here you get to see one of the benefits of quartz. It's much more maneuverable than concrete. If I had a 14 by 50 inch concrete slab 3/4 inches thick and picked it up by the middle, well, then I'd have 2 concrete slabs, each around 2 feet long. I got my slab from Guava Quartz, linked below. They're locally based but ship and facilitate installations all over. This isn't a paid sponsorship, and I actually purchased my slab from them. I like them because they're good people and have good products. One unique example is their 8mm quartz. The slab I'm working on in this video is 20mm, and since we were just talking about concrete strength, or lack thereof in slab form, here's a fun demonstration of the 8mm material getting stepped on, even bounced on, without breaking. Quartz is neat. It was just a couple of inches too long, so I wanted to trim that down. I remembered that I was using these little red spring clamps instead of the big blue clamps, and the little red ones are low profile enough that I can run the track saw right over them and they don't get in the way. This shortcut shows one of the benefits of this bench design. You can always arrange your slab so that both the working piece and the offcut are fully supported. Once the rough cuts are done on the slab, and by rough I mean basically perfect finish size, the polishing, when done correctly, doesn't remove much material at all. Once the rough cuts are done, then it's on to the shaping and polishing. For this, you'll need a variable speed angle grinder, and again, I'm using Makita. I'm also strapping on a Venturi effect device, which was the cheapest way I could reliably get water flowing to the polishing wheels. It works by blowing air through a hose that's around another hose that carries water. The air pulls the water and turns it into a fine mist, which greatly increases its cooling capabilities. The full-time pros have water that comes out the middle of their grinder, and their grinders are fully pneumatic, but I didn't want to spend an extra $2,000 on the size of compressor that I'd need to do that. My water supply is literally just a bottle that I toss in my pocket, and you can see the effect going here. This cup wheel lets me hog out significant amounts of material if I feel like I need to. I'm using it first to remove some missed material from one of the earlier track saw cuts. Here's where the variable speed comes in. The coarser the grit, the lower the RPM. I started out basically on the very lowest speed. Then the cup wheel comes off and the polishing pad backer goes on. The pads themselves attach just with Velcro. I'm not sure whether it's this pad backer or the pads or what, but I had a heck of a time getting the pads to stay centered on the backer. When they're not centered, they still polish, but it's a lot more vibration and it's a lot louder. The pads I'm using are a 4-step system from Zenesis. You can certainly go with the individual grits, but this 0, 1, 2, 3 system lets me get as good a job as any pros out there. They call it their 3-step system because the pad 0 is technically optional, but you can see me using it here to round out the corners and edges, and it really extends the life of the 1 and 2 grits. These are linked below. Finally, we get into the polishing. This is another slow process. If you're comparing to concrete work, I don't really know because YouTubers are great at lying about how long things take. This took me about 30 minutes to polish it, start to finish. You don't have to polish the top unless you're dumpster diving for scraps, which is a totally legit way to get small amounts of material, and fabricators will probably be pretty happy to not have to pay for their disposal costs on whatever you're willing to take away. I'm really good at forgetting to increase the speed of the grinder as I move up in grit, so here I am doing just that. In terms of polishing technique, whether you hold the grinder horizontally, like I do most of the time, or vertically, like the pros with the pneumatic grinders can, what you want to focus on is using your body to create the movement and not your arms. By keeping your grinder fixed against your torso, you can ensure that it stays at the same parallel angle to the edge. I like to take little shuffle steps when I'm going down a long edge, or just transfer my weight from one foot to the other. I will let my arms get involved when I'm rounding a corner though. The other thing to note is you want to use the top half of the disc whenever possible, which sounds funny because yes, the disc is spinning, you're going to be using the whole face of the disc, but you want to think about using just the top edge because it's much easier to control that way. After the rough cut marks are gone and the corners are shaped, we can put the 0 pad down and start working with the 1 pad. Rinse and repeat. Literally. Use enough water so that it feels like you're constantly rinsing the surface. Here's an example of how off-center the discs can come. If anyone with more experience knows how to prevent this from happening, please leave a comment. Then we're going up to the 2 pad. I also decided I wanted to have the handle on the other side. Do whatever works for you. You can start to see the polish coming out in this edge here. Make sure to dry the surface when you're checking it because water will absolutely hide most, if not all, of the imperfections. The little compressor I had borrowed from Santa was really struggling, so I gave it a few minutes to refill. You can also see how much of a mess this made all over my clothes. I was working on this slab late October of 2022, and the weather was definitely starting to turn. This was probably the last good weekend that I had to work on this. It was starting to get late in the day, and I was starting to suffer from my hands getting pretty cold. You can see here how I check my edges for polish. Looking down along them, I can see any rough spots that need more attention. This one turned out pretty okay in the end. This slab was a little bit of leftover that I wanted to build into a console table. If you can find a fabricator that will let you take scraps, then using quartz or even real stone will save you money over concrete. Let's talk numbers a little, and remember that these are all in Canadian yuan, so if you're in the US, think that 100 Canadian is about 73 US as of March 2023. I haven't seen any YouTubers give a really good breakdown of concrete costs, but at a glance, the $200 for forms, $70 for fiber mesh, liquefiers, colorants, sealers, not to mention plywood or cement board base, I gotta think the price adds up in a hurry. I was able to buy a new slab 5 foot by 10 foot for about $1,000, giving me a cost of roughly $20 a square foot. So this little 14 by 46 inch piece has a cost of about $90. A 4 by 8 sheet of melamine form for this would be $70, plus a tube of caulk for the corners is $13, plus GST here puts us just a couple of bucks off the $90 quartz slab. Never mind the actual concrete. or all the other things you'll need. What I just said is a little bit of YouTuber riz too. You can't get $90 worth of quartz, you have to buy a full slab, but one full slab can do all the countertops for most kitchens, island not included. Another full slab did all 3 of my bathrooms, and the last slab did my laundry room with custom sink and my basement wet bar. And of course, there was a little left over for this console table. I said it at the start, and I'll say it again here. Concrete counters have their place, usually outside, and you can do some really nifty things with concrete for furniture, decorations, and don't let's even start on sidewalks or driveways. Quartz has a lot of advantages, can sometimes be thermoformed, can be cheaper for small projects, and is a generally more accepted material for indoor use. I don't hate concrete or hate on concrete. I wanted to show people how simple quartz work can be and encourage some YouTubers to get a little out of their comfort zone. This video was definitely a departure from my normal stuff, so let me know what you think of it in the comments, and if you want more directed how-to videos versus the how vlogs that I've been doing. And be sure to tell your concrete friends about quartz.